When I first saw Kia's announcement for the EV9, I wasn't really sure what to expect. A fully electric, full-sized SUV with seating for up to 7 people? How well would that go over? And honestly, I gotta say, Kia's first foray into a larger SUV that's fully electric has me incredibly excited, especially since this is their first stab at a vehicle this size that's fully electric. I cannot wait to see what the future has in store for Kia EVs if this EV9 is any indication of what's to come. The EV9 in behind me here is in the Pebble Gray exterior, and the color choice, while it's not my favorite, also looks pretty sharp. Surprisingly, I think that bright blue might be my favorite color in this car, but even still, to each their own. Pricing for the EV9 in Canada is going to start at around $63,400 versus $56,400 down in the States, and then it's going to go up depending on how you have it configured. Are you rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive? Which packages have you added on? Which trim level are you looking at? So it's going to stack up, getting a little over 80,000 Canadian or around 70,000 US if you go for something that's fully loaded. Which even still, for a car that's got the power that it does, with the features that it offers and the space, it might make sense for the right buyer. I did mention that you're going to find the EV9 available rear-wheel drive standard with the option of moving into an all-wheel drive system instead. If you're in the southern states and you're not really going to see snow, rear-wheel drive is okay. But if you're in northern states or if you're in Canada, you're absolutely going to want to go for the all-wheel drive version instead. Rear-wheel drive in the wintertime is an absolute nightmare. So northern states, Canada, go for the all-wheel drive version. You're spending a bit more to get there, but trust me on this one, you're going to thank me in the wintertime if this is your case. Wheel styles are interesting inside of the EV9. So size-wise, you're looking at 19, 20, or 21 inch. I'm honestly not crazy about the style of the 19s or the 20s inside of the EV9. The 21s are a little bit of a step up. They're better, but I don't know. It's just that boxier style I'm not too crazy about. I know it's going to come down to a matter of personal preference, but I would love to see some traditional style wheels inside of this instead. One cool thing is that the EV9 has a series of selectable drive modes. So your usual, like an eco, normal mode, and then a sport mode. But it also has different terrain modes. So there's a mud mode, snow mode as well. So I want you to see how this thing handles off-road because it's actually surprisingly good. Would I do some aggressive off-roading in this car? Probably not. But going up to the cottage, you have to do a little bit of trail riding in order to get to your spot. Hey, this is pretty good. All right, let's see. Well, it's not too bad there. Handling it nicely. Hey! Nicely done. Not bad. Kia. The front end style of the EV9 is fairly minimalistic, which actually does complement the vehicle nicely. There are LED headlamps inside of the ride, which lit up at night, look really good. When you get into the GT line version of the EV9, it's going to have a unique front end that's specific to that individual package. But there's a lot of technology you're going to find inside of the EV9 across the lineup. There's a forward sensing system that's here. It's got front brake assist, so if there's a potential collision in front of you, it can automatically brake. If you're pulling out of a spot and there's obstacles either coming from the left or the right, so perpendicular, it can let you know and give you a heads up right inside of the cluster screen, which is incredibly useful. There also is the option for a full 360 camera. So the land trim level by default won't have it. You have to package it up in order to get it, but it would give you a front-facing camera, side sensing system, as well as side-mounted cameras that give you a really, really cool looking 360 view. And I really love the way that Kia does their 360 cameras. It looks so good. On top of that, inside of the highest trim, you're going to find the option for the remote smart parking assistant. So that's going to be able to help you get in and out of tight spaces But it also means that the EV9 has full park assist that can help out with both parallel and perpendicular parking. I get it, you can park yourself, but if you've got mobility issues, it is an absolute lifesaver for people in that circumstance. Getting under the hood of the vehicle is straightforward, so there's a button just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel. You're going to push twice in order to be able to release the hood. And once that button is pushed, on hydraulics, and you've got some functional front space, which is fantastic. Not a ton, but I mean, enough for bags, groceries, whatever the case may be. It's actually kind of nice. And then I'm using it right now in order to store the charge cable that you're going to find that comes right from the factory. It's a 20-foot cable that only has support for level 1 charging, which even still, for most people, if you're only going 20, 30 kilometers a day, more than enough to charge you up. It's also IP67 rated, which means that you can charge up and leave the brick outside in case it's raining or snowing. Well, you can't submerge the brick in water, but if there's water beating off of it, snow, whatever the case may be, that brick has you covered. When you look at the power availability inside the vehicle, there are two different battery choices. It's either going to be a rear wheel motor or dual instead. So it's 76.1 kilowatt available for the battery, or inside of this one, it's a 99.8 instead. What that equates to power-wise here is 379 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque. So I'm going to do a little 0 to 100 to get back onto the highway here. So it's 0 to 60, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, making sure that I'm in sport mode. And going in 3, 2, and... 100. The raw power that you get inside of this car is so ridiculous. So in order to get the best possible power inside of the EV9, you're going all-wheel drive, 99.8 kilowatt hour for the battery. If you go rear-wheel drive, you're going to lose a little bit of power, but you're going to gain some extra range. So which way you go is going to, again, to depend on what you care about inside of your vehicles. If you're in Canada versus the States, lower states, etc. Because like I said, you don't want to go for rear-wheel drive if this is going to be a yearly driver. The warranty in the Kia world is pretty attractive in Canada and the States. So it's a 5-year for your basic, 100,000 kilometers, 60,000 miles. The powertrain in Canada stays at that same 5 years, 100,000 kilometers, with the powertrain in the States getting bumped up to an impressive 10-year, 100,000 mile instead. I would love to see a standard warranty like that in Canada, but you could also increase your warranty at time of purchase if you really wanted to. Hybrid EV components inside of the Kia world are covered for 8 years, 100,000 mile, 160,000 kilometers. You just want to make sure you're maintaining your ride, which in the EV world means that you're not really maintaining much. You've got the option of filling up your wiper fluid underneath the hood here, and outside of that, tires, brakes, you're going to save a boatload of money when you look at maintenance on an EV in comparison to the regular internal combustion engine. If you want to go internal combustion though, you could look at the Telluride, which is based off of the same platform as the EV9. Charging inside of the EV9 is done just along the passenger side. So just a little button push in order to open it up. It does have support for level 1, level 2, and level 3 DC supercharging. Did mention that this has a level 1 charge cable that comes right from the factory. So whether you decide to even look at installing a level 2 is going to depend on your driving habits. Because if you're only traveling, let's say 20 miles a day or 30 kilometers a day, you won't need a level 2 charge station at home. You can just plug in overnight and that's going to have you more than covered. If you're traveling like 40, 50 miles a day, like 70, 80, 100 kilometers, whatever the case may be, a level 2 might make sense at that point. Or just plug in at work, or you can find a charge station available as well to go that route if you really wanted to. The overall charge times are going to vary depending on which version of the vehicle that you're in. Are you in the 76.1 or the 99.8? If you're level 1 charging at home, my max level 1 charge is about 1 kilowatt hour draw, which means that inside of this, it's like 90 to 100 hours in order to go from 0 to 100%. So that's where that trickle charging up to 80% really comes into play. Now, when you look at fast charging, so it's got up to 350 kilowatt hour available, it's going to be like 30-ish minutes in order to go from 10 to 80%, which is incredible. So there are different options available. Like I said, charge times all over the place. Looking at the overall range inside of the vehicle, at a very minimum in the 76.1, you're 370 kilometers or 230 miles. When you get the rear-wheel drive version of the 99.8, that's going to give you 489 kilometers or 304 miles. And then the all-wheel drive version drops you to 451 kilometers or roughly 280 miles. When you go for the GT line, that's going to drop your range a tiny little bit because of all of the extra technology. But either way, the range that you get inside of a full-size SUV that's electric is pretty solid at the same time. The rear end style of the EV9 is also fairly minimalistic. I really like the way that Kia's done this, especially when you look at the rear lamps. The style is solid. And it does have a little black bezel that traces all the way around too, which just makes it pop. You've got the basic Kia badge there, EV9 along the bottom left-hand side. And then technology-wise, there's a lot back here as well. You've always got the backup camera and the rear wiper. And then the rear park sensing system is also there. One cool thing is that you can also tow inside of the EV9. Towing capacity is going to depend on if you're in the smaller battery, this larger one, rear wheel versus all-wheel drive. All-wheel drive, if you're pulling a trailer with brakes, you're maxing out at 5,000 pounds, which is pretty damn impressive. Now, having said that, towing in an electric is going to negatively impact your overall range. But if you're only pulling 1,000 pounds, it might affect it by 5 to 10-ish%, depending on if you're going uphill, downhill, whatever the case may be. So it is cool knowing, though, that you've got the flexibility to be able to tow inside of the EV9 if you need it. Getting into the trunk of the vehicle can be done a boatload of ways. There's a button to the left-hand side of the steering wheel. Right next to the backup camera, there's a button that you can push there. You can utilize the key fob. Then there's also the option for the hands-free liftgate. So, as long as the vehicle's locked and the feature is enabled, you get about 10 to 15 feet away for a few seconds, and all you're going to do, walk to the back end. Oh, you can stop that part way if you wanted to, but I love that feature so much. If you want to know how to set it up and utilize the key fob, check down in the description of the video. I put together a walkthrough explaining how it's done. But in the back here, off to the left-hand side, you can lift up. There's a button in order to be able to open and close the liftgate. There's also a 12-volt power point to the left side. Off to the right, there's a little slider in order to show a little traditional wall plug in the back. So you can use this in order to go glamping if you really wanted to, which is kind of cool. There's also buttons to fold down the second row seats, but I'll touch on that one in a second. Along the back here, there's a tray that you can lift up, and lifting it up gives you access to a teeny bit of storage, but more importantly, the inflator kit. So there's no mini spare tire or full-size spare even you're going to find inside of the EV9. I don't think I've ever seen one in an electric, but what you will find, like I said, is the inflator kit. So the goop and then the air compressor. So if you puncture a tire, you might be able to seal it. But one of the nice things about being a Kia owner is that you also do have access to Kia roadside assistance. And that can help out with lockout services. So if you've accidentally locked yourself out of your car, if you popped a tire, if your battery's drained and you need a boost, if you need a tow to a dealership, that is available as an option. 5 years, unlimited mileage, which is useful. Folding down this third row seats, straightforward. Depending on which trim level of the vehicle that you're in. So in this one, it's going to be a manual, but as you get into that GT line instead, it's going to be full power up and down for the second and for the third row. But for people that are in the manual, all you're going to do, pull the strap, push to drop, same idea on the passenger side, pull, and might have to push a bit in order to drop. And you've got an incredibly flat fold there. And folding down the second row seats can be done from the trunk. You can also do it from inside of the second row if you wanted to. But doing it from the trunk here, you can fold down the left side or the right independently. So just going to button press and down the seat goes. And when you've got the seats folded down, there is a boatload of cargo space inside of this ride. the measurements that you're looking at, specifically behind the first row, you're looking at just from where the liftgate would close here to behind that little console armrest between the first row seats. So if the driver's seat, passenger seat were slid forwards, backwards, gain or lose a little bit of extra space. Now, lifting up the second row seats here is a manual process. And one thing about the second row, when you look at the option with the VIP seats, so the GT line, is that they won't fold fully flat like what you're looking at here. So you will have to be in this option in order to get the seats that'll fold flat. Otherwise, it'll just move forward. So you're not going to get the best possible space inside of that 6-seat configuration. But once this seat is locked down, it's actually locked down into place. So in order to lift it up, that same lever that you would use in order to fold the seat down, you're just going to pull that and lift. And up it goes. Then, lifting up the third row seats is also straightforward. So if you had the power version, there's a button that you could push to lift those seats up. But inside of this version, manual, so you're just going to grab, lift those headrests. Same idea along the passenger side. And it's that easy to do it. The EV9 is built off of the same platform as the Kia Telluride. So if you wanted a gas version of the EV9, go for the Telluride instead. But the power that you get, the performance that you get inside of the EV9 could be worth it if you're in the market for an electric that has seating for up to 7 people. It's a fairly big vehicle too, so getting into the first row, straightforward. There's an assist handle overhead if you really need it for the driver passenger side in the first and in the second row. So there's a handle there and overhead, so along the door and overhead to get in and out of the vehicle a little bit easier. I love that, look at that. Power folding, side view mirrors when you go to lock, unlock the doors. The handles also open and close that way. So neat. Yeah, so it's a power folding side view that has turn signals in it. Blind spot monitoring system is there. And then there's also the option for a side mounted camera that gives you a full 360 view, but you can also utilize that for a blind spot monitoring system as well. It looks really cool, like a blind view system. Hopping inside. Ooh, love that. But along the door, it's simple. Now, a lot of the controls here, rather than finding them down the center stack or underneath the screen, are on the side, on the door itself. So you could toggle on the heated steering wheel, heated ventilated first row seats. If you had the option with the memory, those memory buttons would be there along the side as well. But you've got basics, all of your side view mirror controls, window controls, there's some door storage there, along with speakers that have a really neat design to them as well. There's a series of buttons here, so you can open and close the charge door, open up the front, open and close the liftgate, toggle traction control on or off, increase or decrease the brightness of the cluster screen, and then toggle on the parking brake as well. The steering wheel inside of the EV9 is going to be manual in most trims, with the option for power as well. And then the seats inside of the ride are solid. When you look at the GT line, there is an additional button, well, a few extra buttons, but you'd be able to essentially turn this into like a fully reclined seat as well. And that reclined seat, like the seats in the GT line look so good and they're really comfortable. But these ones are also really solid. Ooh, that's nice. All right. Starting up the vehicle is kind of neat. So there's this little button here. You're going to push in order to start up. Now, looking at space inside of the ride. So with the seat as far down as it's going to go, up overhead. This is ridiculous. What's that? 5-6+ inches of headspace inside of this vehicle. So if you're taller, like I'm 6 feet tall. So if you're like 6'6", maybe even taller, you'd probably comfortably be able to sit inside of this ride. I do find the seat to be very comfortable as well. There's something about these headrests, like the way that they're designed, it's so neat. Like you can see through them. So it's essentially like this little mesh with a cushion in behind, but it is very comfortable. The overall visibility here is good. There's the option for a head-up display in the higher trims of the vehicle, and then a number of other features. But outside of that, a lot of the tech is going to be the same across the lineup. You've got adaptive cruise control, a lane following system, paddle shifters to change out into a one-pedal drive as well. But if you want to walk through on the steering wheel buttons, the cluster, or the infotainment, you'll find a walkthrough down in the description of this video. There are a series of selectable drive modes, with sport mode being my favorite. But I love how in the Kia world, as you jump between different drive modes, it tells you what your expected range is going to be. So sport mode, you're going to be using more of the battery power, which is going to mean slightly less range in comparison to something like the eco mode. There are a series of selectable terrain modes as well, so snow, mud, and sand. Play with traction control, stability control, and things like that. Shifting is also pretty neat. So I mentioned there the power button is there, and then the shifter is here. So all you're going to do, foot on the brake, jump up to drive, all the way down for reverse, but you can pop up for neutral as well. So just a slight drop down, and then parking is right along the end of the stick. But one cool thing is that if you're out of park, so you're in drive, neutral, or reverse, you hit that button there, it's automatically going to put you into park instead. And then, it's all there, engages the parking brake automatically. Climate is neat inside of this ride. So there are basics here. So you can adjust your climate settings here if you want, adjust the fan speed, have it going to your windshield, face, or feet, some sort of Frankenstein combination of the above. But you can also control climate this way instead. So there are some advanced climate control settings right inside of the screen. So controlling climate for the front versus the rear. But you can also adjust it using this pad here. So if you weren't on this screen, you could adjust the driver passenger side, have it going to windshield, face, feet, things like that if you wanted to. You could also adjust the fan speed this way, adjust the rear, front, etc. You've got factory navigation inside of this vehicle, extremely responsive. There's also a boatload of EV options here, so you could take a look at charging for the vehicle. You can also set up certain things too. So if you wanted to have your departure, so essentially preconditioning the cabin, you can set when the vehicle is actually charging up and things like that as well. But if you want to walk through, like I said, if you want to know how to use all of these settings, you'll find it down below. The screen features wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which is amazing. And it is backwards compatible as well. So you could plug in over USB if you wanted to, but you can also, like I said, go wireless. But wireless goes beautifully with this wireless charge pad. But said full walkthrough below. Media-wise, you've got the usual, so AM, FM, Sirius XM. There are sounds of nature as well. So if you wanted more of those like relaxing ambient noises, that's available as an option here too. And then there's USB audio. So there are two different speaker choices that you're going to find inside of the EV9. So it's either going to be an 8-speaker system standard, like what we're looking at here, but there's the option of upgrading to a 14-speaker Meridian sound system instead. The 14-speaker system sounds so good. But you can also tweak the settings here to make this sound also really solid. So the audio that you're listening to is coming just out of the microphone, so there's no post-processing done on that side of things. So let's go through. Adjust it this way. I mean, that audio for me, I think that's pretty solid. So let's listen to another one here. Actually, hold on, let's do this and this. Jump forward in the song a little bit. Okay, so same idea, just out of the mic.
That'll do what I wanna do. I got a different path from everyone, and that includes you. Who are you to tell me how to live life in these times? It feels like nobody's right.
It's so good. The audio is actually surprisingly good in this lower system. It is way better in the higher, the 14-speaker system, but this one is still solid. And you can make it sound really good by going to your sound settings, tone, dropping the treble a little bit, and increasing the bass. In this car, I've played around with the settings quite a bit. Treble too high makes it sound tinny. I don't like bass too cranked, so that, in my opinion, I think gives really good audio inside of this ride. It's good. Good all around. You've got two USB Type-C power points, with one available for both charging and for data. There's a 12-volt power point down there as well. Moving down, you're going to find a nice little storage tray there, which is a surprisingly good amount of space. There are a few cup holders, a little holder there, with a little fingerprint reader to lock your profile in. There's an auto hold setting, which is kind of neat. So with that one engaged, if you're in drive, you take your foot off the brake. So when you come down to a complete stop, the car's not going to move. So it's pretty good from a safety perspective. There's downhill brake control, and you're at least going to get a backup camera, but you do also have the option for a few extra pieces of tech. So in the higher trim, there's also the option for a full 360 camera. there's the blind spot view monitor. So that's going to utilize the side-mounted camera to show you what's going on the cluster screen. And then I also pointed out there's a head-up display available in the higher trims. But you've got that wireless charge pad, a little storage back there. Got a nice design here. Down below, you've got a nice amount of space inside of the glove box. Up overhead, there's at least an auto-dimming rearview mirror. But when you get into the higher trim, fully digital rearview mirror instead, which looks so cool. There's basic, so SOS and tow mode, turn on. Your cabin lights, which are nice and subtle. And then this is just a regular cloth headliner. There is the option for a dual sunroof inside the vehicle, so you're never going to get a full panoramic. It's either going to be, so this part's power, the part in the back would be just fixed glass instead. But this trim level doesn't have the sunroof available, but you will find it in some of the higher trims of the EV9. But, I mean, even without the sunroof, like there's a boatload of headspace because there's no roof. Just opens things up, I think, with the roof though. From there, you've got a little ticket receipt holder on the inside. A light pops in when you hit that right spot. And then this also slides out to block all of the sun. That might be hitting your face. So a little holy crap handle along both the driver and the passenger side as well. But yeah, overall, like I said, I really like the style. Like the flat bottom wheel is great. It feels really solid in the hand as you drive on top of that. But let's see what's going on space-wise in the back. Oh, that's good. All right, hold on, let's go. Make it easy. Unlock the door. Yeah, this is good. There's the option for second row shades in the higher trims of the vehicle. Then you've got an assist handle to get in this way, and then there's an assist handle over the top there as well. So if you need it, you got it. Oh, that's good. Okay, so I've got the driver's seat set up for myself being 6 feet tall, and with it set up this way, I've got a good amount of knee space and foot space in the second row, and head space with me sitting fully upright, 3.5, almost 4 inches. One cool thing, there's a lever along the side, so you can pull that if you wanted to fold the bench down. But you can also push back in order to create this awesome recline. Oh, it's so good. So good. And especially when you get into the dual captain's chair setup, like those VIP seats where you can like fully recline them, kick the legs up. Beautiful. But there are 2 different configuration options that you're looking at inside of the EV9. So it's either going to be this dual captain chair, so this bench setup, or there's a dual captain chair setup instead. So it's either going to be 6 or 7 seats. So you're always going to get 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and then it's either 2 or 3 in the middle. When you get into that fully loaded GT line, heated and ventilated outboard seats. So middle seat in every trim is never going to be heated, but still, yeah, the seat is comfortable. There's no hump in the floor either. So really, I mean, that's fairly comfortable. The cushion, somewhat comfortable. But headspace inside of this, because there's no sunroof, is also pretty solid. 3-ish inches of headspace there. I would not want to get stuck in the middle seat though. I mean, you could do it if you absolutely needed the space. It's available. Not a fan of the middle seat in any car. But you've got anchor points that are there, top tethers behind this seat as well. And then cup holders built in to this version, which you can also set at a unique height if you wanted to. There are pockets behind both the passenger and the driver's side. You've got some cup holders up here. Down low, it's a little storage, well, big storage tray down there. And then typical Kia styling, which I love. You've got little USB power points, USB Type-C built right into the seat there. And then you can also adjust the passenger seat from this row. So if you need to create a little bit more space, you've got that flexibility. And you can even adjust the second row seats here manually. So the bar there, you can grab, damn. So that creates an incredible amount of space for people that are in that third row, which is pretty neat. But actually, forgot that, overhead. You've got basic. So you've got your little handle, hook, and light. Same thing. So you've got on the driver's side here, little handle, hook, and a light. You've got basic vent controls, and then there's full controls for the second row climate as well. So auto mode, AC, have it going to face, feet, etc. Turn off, adjust the fan speed back here. So you've got your HVAC controls for your face. Feet are blowing down low. It's good though. All right. Now, getting into the third row is straightforward. So it doesn't matter if you're in the bench configuration here or if you've got the dual captain's chair. Like, obviously with the dual captains, you could just pass through and walk to the third row. But outside of that, there are two buttons. So there's one down low or up high. You can push there in order to have it fold forward. It does look really nice inside of the GT line when you do that though. And then getting into the third row, not tricky by any stretch. So here's the thing, let's move the seat back a bit. And the seat's essentially as far forward as it's gonna go. So I've got a good amount of knee space back here, which is all right. And head space is actually surprisingly good as well. Like 2.5, 3-ish inches of head space inside of the third row. But here's the thing, this seat is as far back as it's gonna go. And when it's set up that way, there's 0% chance I'm fitting back here for a distance trip. So you'd need to have the second row seats move forward a little bit. But still, the fact that I can fit comfortably inside of the third row is pretty cool. And the seats are actually, I don't mind them. Like, this is a lower trim as well. And the seat comfort, while it's not as comfortable as the second row, is still pretty good at the same time. There's some basics back here. So there's a USB power point, cup holders as well. Along the side, some cup holders, a little USB port back there too. There's a little emergency release there, so you can use that in order to be able to fold the seat down. And then getting out, there's a button along the top. You can push, but before I hop out, got a little HVAC control in the back there, and then you can also control your cabin lights for the third row as well. Ooh. But, I mean, overall, I think that Kia did a really good job on the EV9. I mean, if you're after a 6-7 seat vehicle, you might want to look at this as an option, like put it on your radar. The seats are incredibly comfortable. The driving dynamics are amazing. So on that note, let's take this out for a spin. Have a little bit of fun. And the handling. Like, you wouldn't expect handling and performance like this out of a car that is so big. Like, this is an SUV. It's essentially a Kia Telluride that's been electrified. And the performance that you get inside the vehicle, the handling that you get is incredible. It feels like a very, very solid ride. And that's because it is. I mean, a little bit of road noise there, but it's not nearly as bad as you'd think a large SUV like this would be. It's nice. Oh, good overall. One thing that I've really come to appreciate in a number of Kia vehicles is all the technology. Like not hands-free driving, I should say, but there's adaptive cruise control with a full lane centering system. So right now my hands are temporarily off of the wheel and it's taking me around the bend here. Eventually I will get a message inside of the cluster screen telling me that I've got to put my hands back on the steering wheel. But it's good to know that if you lose focus for a second, you sneeze, you have a medical episode, whatever the case may be, if you have all of the safety technology enabled, the car absolutely has you more than covered. You're going to find the EV9 available either rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. So this is the all-wheel drive version, and it leads to, I mean, the handling there is pretty damn good. Let's do a little 180 here, so what the turning radius is like. Ooh, there we go. Not bad. Not bad. Yeah, like I said, the pick up and go to get back up to speed is so good. So good. And that was a look at the Kia EV9. Like I said, I'm actually a surprisingly big fan of the majority of this vehicle. It's just the wheels I'm not too crazy about, but I could live with that for the performance that you get along with the feature set. I do really like the features that come with the GT line, but if you're on a budget, just the regular land all-wheel drive could be right for the right buyer as well. But you can find all of the build details for this Kia and links off to Kia Canada and US down in the description of this video. But if you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and until I see you next time, take care. And I really love the way that Hyundai has that available. you're always going to have the backup sensing system, so that rear parking sensing system. There's not too much to it, like where the grill would technically